Going.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. And we're so glad that you're joining us today for our episode number 14 of Business Unusual. I did count that right, didn't I?
You did. That's exactly right.
Okay, very cool. We even thought about skipping episode number 13 because I don't know if anybody has had teenagers. We were discussing that before we got started, but I had an agreement with my kids about, okay, we are going to skip the entire year of 13 because of the whole angst thing. So you decide if you want to be 12 for 2 years or if you want to jump right to 14 and go into that being a mini adult. And that worked really well with the first two that were boys. They decided they were going to hang out and be 12 for a couple of years. The first girl that came along, it didn't quite work out to be that. So anyway, but we made it through episode number 13 last week. We're digging into episode number 14 this week. I am Brendan Filbert, managing partner with SalesWorks, and I'm delighted to meet several of you that are new on the call today. And my business is helping people identify and engage their next opportunity, whether that is an amazing new client or whether that is their next engagement for employment. So that's who I am, Chris.
And I'm Chris Motley, the owner of Motley Creations, and we help small to medium businesses with big ideas meet their goals. We're a marketing company, and what we believe is for you to be successful, we must be successful. So, or for us to be successful, you must be successful. And our motto is, we make you look good, right? So.
And he does a phenomenal job with this. So we're going to be talking quite a bit during our presentation today about collaboration and about how when you want to get to revenue quickly, sometimes your best strategies are to go to others that have quite a bit of opportunity coming their way and help them manage it. So we're going to be digging into how you do that today. And we are excited to have you on board. Now, just a couple of housekeeping issues. We are recording the session, and there's going to be a whole lot of places that we invite you to participate in the conversation. So just familiarize yourself with the questions pane over on the side of your screen. And then there's also several places that will ask you to raise your hand. And there's a little option there where there's a little hand. You can just hit that one. That way we can make sure that we get a sense of where our audience is at and what the focus has been in your business, because again, we want this to apply to as much to you as you can, as it possibly can. All right, we are going to do our best to get wrapped up by 11:30. So we hope to be on time and on task with what we're focusing on today. And we're going to dive in and get started. So first thing that we want to talk about is just basically taking a snapshot of where you're at right now in your business.
We can't see your screen yet.
You can't see my screen yet. Oh, that's kind of an important thing.
Another housekeeping thing really quick is for those who didn't hear me before, is use the questions panel to, when Brendan asks you a question and you want to answer, if you just want to raise your hand, like Shed, raise your hand. If you want to answer a question or ask one, put it in here and I'll field those. So.
Fantastic. All right. So tech check. Can everybody see the screen now? And can you hear? We're good to go?
We're
okay.
Good.
All right. So I am going to go ahead and kill webcams for now on my end, just so that I end up not killing my bandwidth, because, you know, the joys of technology is you only have so much that goes so far. Now, current reality, let's just kind of get a little bit of a sense right now of where our audience is. Help me understand, how many of you have had a return to business as usual where you really haven't seen things drop off with your prospects with everything that's been happening? Has anybody had that where you just haven't really experienced much of a, much of a decline? Okay, so we've got a few on the call that, it's been pretty steady. Now, let's hear from those that are experiencing a drop-off in their business. Got a few?
No, got no decline from some.
Yep. So we've got some that have had nothing, and we've got others that are experiencing. So we're going to be coming at this then from two different perspectives as we're going through our presentation today. So the first step that you have to do is you have to evaluate what your current reality is. And there are three big questions that we have to ask about your current just the business that you're in right now, where it's at. So first thing is, are your current clients spending money? If we want to get to revenue and we want to increase our revenue, you have to think about what those immediate pockets are. And the first pocket to always tap on with impacting your business, it's always the people that are already spending money with you. They already know you, they trust you, you've already built that relationship. So it's a lot easier to go to that group of relationships and approach them for business first, unless they're not spending money. If they've been impacted by everything that's going on with the pandemic and are now experiencing challenges with workforce or with the civil unrest, everything that's going on right now, then we're going to have to look in other areas. Now, your current client spending money is not the only question that you have to ask about that group of relationships, though. You have to also identify if they are experiencing need. And are there areas that you can add more value and expand your offering there as well? Because in a lot of cases, if there's a pivot that needs to take place in your business, your clients are going to be that first indicator of what that pivot needs to be, as well as provide the best path to monetize that pivot quickly so that you can bootstrap whatever effort that you need to make in order to, if you're going to shift your marketing, or if you have to staff up, or if you have to add technology. The best thing to do is always look for how we can fund that as we're moving forward. And then the third question that we want to ask is, does their need that they're experiencing fit into their top 5 priorities? And when I'm talking about top 5 priorities, there's a whole lot of people that need a lot of help right now. And the question that you have to ask about what they're experiencing right now is it so compelling that they just can't avoid answering the question in order to continue functioning in their business? And right now, if the answer to that isn't an overwhelming yes, then you're going to have an uphill climb with getting business won right now, just based on all the turmoil and instability. And my whole approach with my clients is I want you focusing on the easiest and shortest path to revenue. And then from there, you can expand and start to tap on the other pockets that may be a little bit more intensive of a buyer journey that has to be satisfied. But for right now, everything that we're talking about today is the shortest and the quickest path to revenue, which I think everybody is always on board with, is let's do fast and easy, or as easy as it gets right now. Because I think we'll all agree that there's not a lot going on right now that kind of fits into that easy bucket. So we want to help with the easy button that we can hopefully help you find in your prospecting effort. So here's a question right now. Do you recognize that you need to pivot in your business? So we're going to take just a minute. You can chat in and tell us yes or no, you need to pivot. And then if there is a pivot that you need to make, what I'd like for you to do is chat with me if you have already identified what that direction is.
One couple saying yes.
Okay. And then we've got some that are experiencing a serious decline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we've got some that have already identified. Oh, and then we've got one that already is at revenue from their pivot. Fantastic. All right. So Now, Joanna, would you just do me a favor and quickly chat with me what your pivot was that you made into what new market? That would be fantastic. All right, and then we've got some that are in startup mode. Oh, fantastic. So you've pivoted, basically it looks like you've pivoted to an e-commerce site. Fantastic. And that is going to be a big area that Chris and I spend a lot of time focusing on with the Business Unusual series over the coming weeks. We're going to be talking about how to add other distribution to your current product offering, and e-commerce is a part of that. So you are definitely in the right room. Fantastic. Okay, awesome. Well, hey, Chris, make sure, Joanna, do me a favor and chat your email address to Chris, because we may want to chat with you. So who knows, you may have signed up for this and you may end up getting business out of your participation. We love it when that happens. Okay, all right, so I think we've identified that there's a need to pivot. Let's dig in and talk about how we make that pivot happen. First place, we always want to start with our current clients. So we're looking for the lateral clients and the lateral opportunities. And I will encourage you, you're going to receive the recording link to our session today. Also go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because there is a couple of episodes that we talk about where we dive deep into that topic of research and how to do A/B testing and really identify within your prospects or clients, where do you want to focus your attention and energy? So you're going to want to tune into that episode, because we do dive a lot deeper into that topic there. But the first thing is we always want to look at our current clients and identify, out of this group of relationships that you have, who is continuing in business. Because while there are a lot of companies that are experiencing serious decline, as one of our attendees pointed out, she's had no decline, and her audience, which is manufacturers, have actually been reporting record-breaking months in their business over the past, couple of months since all of this has happened. Particularly, I mean, holy cow, look at toilet paper manufacturers, for crying out loud. I don't think they have experienced this big of business, the opportunity in their business in decades. Many of them are talking about historical records that they're breaking. So I encourage you to always look at your client base first and recognize those that still have needs, as well as where are they continuing to experience a lot of challenges. The other targets that we're going to dig into, and we're going to talk about how you really expand, and that's your referral partnerships, or those strategic alliance partners that you can immediately double your business by accessing someone else's base of relationships that are experiencing a lot of business also, or maybe they're experiencing some of that same business is continuing, but not at the rate that they would like it to be. So maybe if the two of you joined forces, you'd be able to cover a lot more ground together. And then we are also looking for those outliers right now. And it's funny when you look at the history of business and the economy, and companies that perform really well during recessions and downturns. And there's an amazing book that I recommend everybody read. It is called Great by Choice, and it's by Jim Collins. And he talks about what makes companies successful even during hardship. And he talks about identifying just those different outlier groups, and that when we focus on identifying those, sometimes you can identify very profitable and productive revenue streams and prospect groups. And it's sometimes, well, we often find you emerge from downturn even stronger than you went into it. And that's one of the things that I want you looking for throughout this is, what are these three major pockets that you can focus on? Because as Chris talked about earlier when we were getting started, he's all about helping you get the maximum benefit from your marketing with the minimal expense and amount of effort. And if we focus on these three categories, this is where you can have that result in your business. So first question that we're going to dig into is, of course, your current clients that are needing help. So out of those three groups, we want to look within them and identify what new need has been exposed. So when we're talking about this, it's one of those things that's really important that you approach your current clients with a perspective of understanding where they're at. And that means you go into it without any preconceived notions. So I don't want you going into it thinking about, I want to sell this product or this service. You need to approach this as market research. That is I just want to understand what's going on in your world. And that's really important that you have those conversations and make it a regular conversation that you're having with your current clients. And the reason you're going to do that is because as they start to share with you what they're navigating and the situation that they're experiencing in their business, you're going to identify that there are other people that look just like them. And when you identify that, it's a great opportunity for you to ask your clients for introductions to those opportunities. We, of course, want to get referred. And a current client that's referring you is going to introduce you to an opportunity that is already farther down the buyer journey. We're going to talk about that a little later on during our conversation today. But they're farther down the buyer journey. So again, it's less work for you to be able to sell them on any solution or direction that you're sending them on. And then it also helps you recognize what relationships they need that align with yours. So for example, I'll give a great one. We have one of our fantastic clients joining us on the call today. Her name is Alicia. And Alicia is an SBA lender within a small community bank that is very nimble and just amazing at providing great value during all of this, all of the turmoil. And then they've got access, of course, to the PPP loan program. The Women's Business Center is another great example of someone that has access to amazing resources and lenders. What that does is you recognize that when all this starts, you go to whatever the most compelling need is of your client or prospect at that moment in time. And access to capital was a critical question. So it gave me an opportunity to reach out and talk to Alicia and introduce Alicia to some of my clients that needed her services, and also introduce them to Michelle and a few of my other lenders that we have that are within our current client base. But when all this started, there was nothing that had to do with focusing on forward looking or forward thinking. The crisis was dealing with day-to-day operations and making payroll that week. That was the question. So our focus was entirely wrapped around the finding those just resources that are immediately going to come to bear and make you look good. So for example, that right after the shelter in place order came down, I send out a weekly prospecting tip, and we'll welcome all of you to that. You have the opportunity to participate in that. If you like it, great. If not, you can just hit unsubscribe. But the weekly tip that I sent out the week following the shelter in place order happening had nothing to do with what I do, which is prospecting. It was nothing but a list of resources. And there were 6 or 8 different websites and resources on that list that were focusing on everything from who do you talk to about assistance with your utilities and your mortgage and unemployment, the link to that, and then access to the EIDL link for that emergency disaster preparedness. So there was nothing going on that was, again, forward thinking. I addressed that at that moment in time. My open rates on that email were double what they normally are. And the other thing that did is that also created a lot more of a loyal following. My open rates have been consistently higher since then, and I've engaged with a newer audience that's much more engaged. So what you want to identify is, what are those relationships at this moment in time that that your client needs, maybe even more than they need you. And you're going to pull those relationships in and solve problems. Because one of the things that you want to recognize is that buyers today want you to solve a couple of problems for them before they're super excited about hiring you. It just has to do with the state of our world and the fact that people are risk averse right now. So if you have the opportunity to bring referral relationships in and refer them and solve a problem and get your referral partner business at the same time, that ends up with a double win for you. Because not only are you helping that buyer or prospect during the buyer journey, you're also building a concept we call emotional equity within that referral relationship. And that pays huge dividends later on down the road. And that's what we have to think about, is right now it's all about creating that investment in relationships. And now let's dig into a little bit more about exactly what that's going to look like. So what you're going to look at is, if you look, we've got 3 circles that are on the screen right now. And you are looking for those areas that complement yours. So for example, if we've got, I don't know if you can see my cursor floating around the screen right now.
Yes.
But we have an area right over here. Let's say this is your services or your products that you sell, this whole circle right here. And then this circle over here is the potential referral partner and their services. And then here is the client need. And what is interesting about identifying those avenues to business is, the more you have overlap in these areas right here, the faster your opportunity is to get to revenue and the bigger impact that it can have with your business. So unfortunately, in a lot of cases, we may look at these circles and say, oh, I overlap too much with them, or they're competing with me within my clients, or they might compete with me. And instead, what I encourage you to think about is a concept that one of my clients calls cooperation, which is cooperative competition. So for example, our best referral partners right now, we are embarking on a joint venture with another sales trainer. And at first glance, you look and it's like, well, your services and their services overlap a lot. But really, when we started diving in, yes, we have some of these areas right here that we overlap, but we each have so much other opportunity to provide value in that relationship that we will just structure which conversations we have and just communicate frequently with them on what opportunities come out of that client to respect the relationship. And it's going to have a huge impact on our business right now. And that's what you have to look for, is identify those people that maybe you first thought about it as, oh, they're a competition of mine. They may actually represent a greater opportunity for you than they are competition. So for example, if we go back and talk about Alicia again and use her as an example, she's a banker, but yet she gets a lot of her other referrals from other bankers. And it's because her area of expertise is SBA, and that's what she focuses on. So she has the opportunity to partner with a lot of other banks that may not have the infrastructure in order to be able to deliver a great SBA experience. So that's what you want to think about is, are there some of those relationships that you have right now? So let's take just a quick second, and I want you to raise your hand and tell me if you have existing referral relationships that are very productive for you. Let's just take a minute and see where our audience is at. I know I got a few folks on the call because they're clients and I hear about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a few, and then we've got others. Okay, so now chat with me real quick in the questions box. Let me know if you have attempted to go down this path for referral collaboration and you haven't yet hit that perfect recipe to make it really sing in your prospecting effort. So give me so if you did not raise your hand that you've got productive relationships, chat in with me if you've tried it or if it's something that you really haven't dug into yet.
Okay. And one of the things while we're waiting for that is you could look at these circles and put, my company on the left, Brendan's on the right, and the clients that we serve, right? And so we are practicing what we preach, right? I've talked to a ton of my clients, and a lot of them are, well, at the beginning of this, we're terrified. And what I've told them and what I'll tell you is that you need to keep communicating with your clients. It's the same thing that Brendan has been saying. And calling them or just sending an email saying I'm checking in is that's not good. You want to call or send an email that said, here's an article, I know you're worried about this, and you want to be a thought leader, right? And so we've come up with like 4 different products and things that we can do, this being one of them, this webinar series. So looks like some people have thought about it, some people have done it or are trying to do it.
Okay, so what we want to make sure that you have today is the concrete action steps that you can take with your relationships so that you move from concept to execution with some of these different initiatives that we're talking about. So I do want to make sure, and I let you know this, you want to hang out till the very end because we actually have someone on our call today that we're going to be featuring. I'm going to give her just a really quick spotlight to give you an example of how one of these collaborations is working in her business right now. So just know that what we're talking about, we want to show you what it looks like as well as just tell you how to do it. That way you recognize, okay, this is what this business is doing. Here's what I may be able to incorporate in my business. Because it's really important that you recognize that this entire process and identifying how you're going to grow your business, it is a campaign. This is not a one-time effort. It's not just a one attempt and then you're done. This is you're going to identify what those opportunities are and make an active effort to pursue them. So you think about it like almost a military campaign where it's not just one battle. You're looking at an intensive effort, and we want to give you the tools today to get started on creating that effort in your business. The other area I want you really looking at is I want you looking at your client base and identifying any outliers that there are. So for example, there's a manufacturer in town that I absolutely love what they're about right now. Their clients were retail, and everybody knows retail has been impacted dramatically. Some of you may be retailers that literally had your businesses shuttered by government order overnight. And your business, you're sitting here wondering what to do because you cannot serve your clients. Well, what this manufacturer did is they recognized that their single biggest client segment was horrifically impacted. And they could have basically stepped back and said, oh no, what am I going to do? Instead, what they did is they went to that group of retailers and said, what are your biggest challenges that you're experiencing right now? And they asked a lot of questions, and they discovered that access to the personal protective equipment, or PPE, they just couldn't get anything. They couldn't get masks, they couldn't get shields, they couldn't get screens. There was nothing that was available. So what they did is they went to that group that was still functioning and said, okay, what are the things that you need right now? And they actually designed face shields. And the company that I'm referring to is called, I think it's designed, oh gosh, what's the name of it? They're located in North Kansas City. I'm going to make sure that when I send out the link to you all, that I share this with you, because what they did is they actually did a design for a face shield, and they did a contest with their employees. It was really cool. It made the news. And they actually put the plans for the winning design up on the internet and gave it away for free because it was super easy to make. And there were a lot of people that were able to go to their hardware store and pull together the pieces of what they needed in order to construct this. So that's where it started, and now it's led into their business is thriving right now based on they're selling those plastic or plexiglass screens for retailers, and they're selling the plastic shields and all the protective equipment right now. They are just thriving right now. And they did that because they identified that outlier prospect or that need within their prospect, and then they provided overwhelming value addressing that need and ended up gaining access to just extraordinary opportunities. So that's what I want you looking for right now, are the outliers. And then as you discover the outliers, what we want to do is recognize that success leaves clues. This is another one of those concepts that's talked about quite a bit in Great by Choice by Jim Collins. What you want to identify right now, the shortest path to revenue, is looking at your current clients and identifying new services or products that you can offer to people who are already spending money with you. We have never experienced loyalty within our client bases like we are right now. People want you to be successful, and they want to feel like they're a part of that success, and they take ownership in your success. And we want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to do so. So don't just go into hiding within your business. Be aggressively reaching out, having those conversations. As Chris says, we don't ever want to call with I'm just checking in, or I want to see how you're doing. We always want to reach out with a very compelling reason for them to engage with us. We want to let them know that we're focusing on providing value to them in their business right now. And you want to know what their top issues are and whether or not you can help them address them. And do not position it as I'm calling to sell you something. It's hey, we are all in the same boat right now, and we're going to get through this better together than we are if we try to do it independently. And then during these conversations, this is where you're going to identify those new services or products that you can offer. You are also going to be actively looking for the partnerships or joint ventures. So for example, I have wanted to do a weekly webinar series for probably 2 or 3 years, but I just couldn't get my arms around what it would look like, or how I would get it done, or how I would get it organized. And I knew that if I tried to do it by myself, that I wouldn't have the end result and I wouldn't be able to deliver the client experience that I wanted to. So one of my clients and referral partners is Chris. And I reached out and said, hey, here's my idea and here's what I'd like to do. And he's like, well, let's make it happen. And we dove in, and within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, we had our very first webinar out there. I will tell you, when you go back and you look at the recordings, it was a little bit rough. And that's something that you have to know when you reach out and recognize that Chris's impact on my business has become more and more visible as we progress, because he really does make you look good. And sometimes it takes, I'm a little bit of a work in progress to get to that looking good point. But here's what I want to make very clear is that you have to practice the Microsoft approach to product offering launch right now. So there's two different philosophies when it comes to launching new products or service. We have the Microsoft approach, which is let's get it to market. And then we have the Apple approach, which is we test and iterate until it's perfect and as bug-free as we can make it before we launch. So let me just have a quick show of hands. How many of you on the call are perfectionists? Anyone?
Yeah, not unusual. That's
I got all kinds of hands going up. Look at that. Okay, so I want you to write something down for me, everyone. I want you to write down the perfect is the enemy of the good. Okay? So the objective with getting to revenue quickly is you get there with a minimum viable product, or MVP. So as I'm talking about all of these different avenues, this is not it's going to be perfect before you start talking about it. Our philosophy is you get to revenue and then you refine the product, because then that truly has proven that there is a there. Okay? All right. So partnerships and joint ventures, and we're going to talk to you a little bit later about a joint venture that Chris and I are working on right now. So you see yet another example of how this works. You are also going to identify those similar prospects. So that new audience. So know that the buyer journey is typically 8 to 22 interactions or engagements with you prior to them moving forward. When you have a new audience, they have to have more of the towards the upper end of that in the buyer journey. And if we can follow the the path of previous recessions, it is definitely upwards. You're looking at that at around 15 to 20 touches. And that's a whole lot of work. If you think about every one of those engagements needs to deliver overwhelming and immense value. Now, all of a sudden, that whole easy button thing, you're starting to think of how on earth does it happen? And how you get to the lower end of the spectrum is when you discover a need that is so great that they can't do anything but hire you to address it. And with that, the 3 M's that I like to talk about, this new audience has to have the means, meaning they've got to be the decision makers. They've got to have access to the checkbook and be able to allocate resources and make decisions. They've got to have the money, meaning they've got to have budget or be able to find budget somewhere. And they've got to have that motivation. Now, motivation, that goes back to that your service has to address a priority that's in their top 5 list of needs. Top 10 isn't enough anymore right now. It has to be in that top 5. So that's what you're looking for when you're looking for those similar prospects. And then once you identify those groups, you're going to experiment. And you notice I didn't say try and fail. I said experiment, because the perspective that I want you taking on this approach is you truly are going to go in a number of different directions and identify where you get the most traction. And then when you identify that, we do basically what's called A/B testing to figure that out. And we actually have an episode on that also, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, that talks about experimenting in that A/B testing to figure out which direction you go and making sure that you truly are basing it on a valid, what's called data set, which means there's got to be enough opportunities that you're pursuing, that it's not just anecdotal. So right now we have a tendency to try something maybe 1 or 2 times and then come back and say, well, I didn't get anywhere with that, so I guess there's nothing there. And that's not enough. What you have to do is you have to identify multiples. So what I'm recommending with my clients, and many of my clients are either solopreneurs, they're independent consultants, or they're small businesses. So we don't have A/B testing like big corporations do A/B testing. We have A/B testing like you get a group of 10 people together that look something similar, and you approach that group of prospects or that group of clients with a concept. But it's like I said, it's not just 1 or 2. It needs to be enough that the information that you're able to gather is pretty significant. And that's really how you're going to find your next best opportunity that you're going to pursue. And then the goal is to step into that existing buyer journey as much as you can. So you want somebody else to have laid that foundation or groundwork for you whenever possible. So what we're looking for is if it's that 8 to 22 touches along the buyer journey, then, and most of the time, buyers are about 2/3 of the way through before they engage with prospects. And just so you know, this information is based on a study that I refer to every single year. It's done by HubSpot, and it's on marketing trends, and it does an analysis of the previous year. Right now, we're basing a lot of our decisions on 2019, but I'm also coloring it based on what the experiences that Chris and I had with helping businesses navigate through other recessions. So just so you know, I started my business in 2001. That's when I started as a consultant. And I remember where I was and what was happening in my business when the second plane hit the towers. And that was when I was first starting my business. So I have been there, done that through some pretty crazy times in the economy. And what I'm sharing with you and what Chris is sharing with you is that the more you can engage with somebody else's buyer journey and piggyback on their efforts, the better the outcome is and the less effort for you to actually sell them. And that's why you always want to look back at that statistic that is 92% of people begin their search with a referral or asking, who do you know who has helped somebody else through this? And that's why it's so important for you to really be leveraging those existing relationships that you have in order to help you throughout this buyer journey. Because if you start with a cold prospect and you are an unknown service or provider, then you are going to be way on the upper end of the number of touches required, and it's just a lot more work. And I remember when we started out this whole conversation, I'm like, let's go for the easy and the shortest path. And that's not the way to do it, is with cold leads and new services, new products. We want to start with where it's warmer. So we want to step in with that. So let's talk about how we can accomplish that. First of all, recognize referrals are key. We want to build that entry point. So what you do is think about right now, who would be someone that is already working with your existing clients, or not your, maybe they're existing clients of yours that you'd like to do more business with, or maybe you have just a few clients that overlap with them and you would have the opportunity to refer quite a bit. So first place that I want you to do is start with who those common prospects would be. And then think of who is already serving those relationships. So does everybody have one of those right now? Give me a quick raise your hand. Can you think of a place to start?
And sometimes what we suggest is you get somebody to hold you accountable, right? Because sometimes I think things in my head that make perfect sense and I say them out loud to somebody and I think that's the dumbest crap I've ever heard. So for me, it's easier to brainstorm and bounce it off somebody, right? So.
And maybe who you bounce it off of is one of your clients. So go to your clients when you're having these conversations with them, especially if you find out that they have worked with someone that has helped them through a very, very challenging issue. And that's one of your best places to start, is within those relationships. And this is that conversation that you can open the door. We also want to look where you can refer. So I gave you the example of Alicia a little bit earlier. And I talked about how, you know, when you're thinking about that relationship, you might look at it and step back and say, oh, I don't have anybody, or this won't work for me or my business. I don't want you thinking about it like that. I want you thinking about what the potential is. And even if there's only a little bit of potential, sometimes if you start digging into that little bit, you can really expand the opportunity. So we want to look where you can refer. Then we want to approach a partner or a solution that might be able to address that need. Then we're going to do some brainstorming. We're going to strategize on what that offer might look like. And then, as I mentioned, it's not just a, hey, I'm going to be thinking about you and you think about me. You want to make sure that you really dig in and do some brainstorming on what you can do together to create something that would be, again, just immense and amazing value. You're going to create the timeline, and then we want to market intentionally. And I actually have, let's do a really quick example here. And what I'd like for Kathy, can I unmute you and you share with us a little bit about what you're working on with one of your partners? And yeah. I'm going to set the stage really quick. So just so everybody understands, Kathy is a consultant that works with manufacturers on process improvement and lean, as well as Scrum. So she's going to share a little bit about what she's come up with as far as a collaboration.
Okay, so I have 2 referral partners I'm working with that we are all working together to collaborate so that we can all expand our reach to get prospects in our pipeline. One is Michael Cantu of Accelerate. He has a great software platform, same name, and I'm an authorized reseller of that, and it's business process automation software. And if you're not familiar with what that is, if you can think of any business process you're acquainted with that has a lot of manual steps with a lot of paper changing hands and emails going back and forth, Accelerate, it automates all of that. So an example of how well that works is one recent implementation is reducing the work of 4 people down to 1. So the other partner is Steve Stava. He owns a company called Twisted Pair. They're a software development company, and they build out these Accelerate projects. So as Brendan kind of mentioned, I do process improvement work. And if Michael and Steve find they're going into a prospect, potential client, and they find that they have business processes that are really in disarray, then I would come in to streamline those before they start building out to the Accelerate implementation. So now we are all referral partners for each other. If Steve or Michael finds a prospect for Accelerate and there's a need to clean up their processes, then they'll bring me in and they'll get a commission off of my efforts. If I find something for them, then I will get a commission for myself. So our collaboration is really a win-win scenario. Our number of opportunities we can all work on are growing exponentially because of that collaboration and partnership. And Brendan also asked me to talk about an upcoming webinar. It's another example of this collaboration. Michael and I are going to be giving on July 2nd, and it's sponsored by Kansas Manufacturing Solutions. The topic is Restart Process Improvement. We'll be talking about the good, better, and best steps we can take to improve the business processes. So if I hadn't had this collaboration, I would just go in and say, okay, this is what process improvement is. But what's cool about this is, like I talked about good, better, and best, The best step will be where the process is what I've already improved. He can come in and automate that. So we're offering a more robust offering that will benefit businesses more.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. Does that make sense to everybody? Or are you getting ideas that of what you can do and partnerships you can have? That's our main concern right here. I do have one issue.
I'm back.
Oh, she's back. Okay.
I'm back.
I was getting ready to share my screen with you.
Woohoo! So, okay, so everything is still working. Yay! Maybe.
Maybe.
All
Hold
right.
on. There we go.
So I'm still here. Yay. Okay.
Yay. Slideshow. Oops.
All right. So while Chris is pulling up the next slide and getting everything to cooperate. Okay, so one of the things that we've talked about is identifying what that common group is, what the partners are, and then how can you play together and how do you serve each other during this? Okay, Chris, is that moving for you?
Oops. Yeah, it just keeps pausing. Oops. Yeah, I went too far, but yeah.
If you want to go back one slide.
Yep.
Because what I'd love to do is share with them. So one of the things that Chris and I did when we were chatting about who we most want to serve, what's important that you identify right now is who has the compelling need that you can serve. And Chris and I have worked with a lot of businesses that are just getting started and trying to figure out how they diversify their product offering. So we actually created a joint venture that is a training class that teaches people, business leaders, independent consultants, how to create a knowledge product or an entry-level product to their service or solution. And that product is called Brand You. And that's one thing that we actually help with creating what some of these special offers would be. What I would ask, and I'll just throw this out there if you have interest, is if you want to look at what the process is to build that joint offering, we outline it during another webinar that we do. Would love to invite you to participate in that or listen in on one of the recordings. But the point is, we want you to have multiple examples that you can look at and you can think of, how can I help other people solve a compelling problem that they're dealing with right now? And that's the part that's super important. And did I go away again?
No, you're here.
Okay, I'm still here because
Yeah.
all of a sudden my control panel left.
Oh, well, I can hear you.
So is it my screen that's showing or your screen that's
It's
showing?
fine. And one thing I wanted to add to that is in Brand You program is one of the things we talked about is having conversations instead of having one-to-one, having one-to-many, right? So it may be not even a sales conversation. It may be if you're an accountant and people ask you about the PPP program or you know, whatever's going on in that area, then you can just refer them to a video that you've already made, right? And they can just go see that every time rather than having that conversation over and over again. So it could be on that end of it, or it could be like what Brand You is, which is something that helps develop what that product would be. So.
And the other thing to think about is that providing immense and overwhelming value during the buyer journey, that's what you want to think about, is how do you create truly an experience for that prospect that they recognize that it's a no-brainer for them to hire you. And that's what we really want to make sure that we're accomplishing. And then one of the other things that we want to make sure that you recognize through your collaboration is that you are actively taking steps to promote one another. So another collaboration is the example of what you're in right now with the Women's Business Center and how they expanded. Chris, can you advance the slides?
Yes.
So if you look at what they're doing with the Women Wednesdays entrepreneurship series, and you identify that, okay, what are all of the compelling needs, the more you can create an entry point, you're going to find a lot of amazing professionals that are giving away knowledge right now, because it is our opportunity to help you solve problems, open the door, build a relationship. And then as that relationship delivers value, it's a natural progression to have business happen. People want to reciprocate. They want to support you. They want you to be successful. And the more you help them, and you also make it very clear how they can help you, the better you're going to have. The sales process is going to be seamless and very natural. I mean, I don't know if anybody on the call here is super excited about sales. Does anybody here absolutely love selling more than anything else you ever do? I'm not seeing hands go up. What's up with that? So how does this fit in your priority? Is it in your top 5 favorite things to do, or is it in your top 5 least favorite things to do? That's the question.
Right.
So if we don't love selling, we want it to be easy. Okay, Alicia, did you want to add something?
No, ma'am. I like vacationing better.
She likes salsa dancing better.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So Alicia is a salsa dancing banker. Okay. So we've given you a lot of ideas today, and here I am wrapping things up right on time at 11:30. Go me. That never happens.
Wow. That's crazy.
All right. So I'm going to encourage you all, if you have any questions or you came up with some really cool ideas from this, what we'll invite you to do is we have a Facebook group that's called the Prospecting Challenge Group. And our Prospecting Challenge Group is, okay, we're a little bit different in there in that it's not made up of a bunch of people that are in there actively trying to sell. Our Prospecting Challenge Group is made up of people that sales is not their favorite thing in the world to do. And we're a community, and we'd love for you to come join that community. So if you want to hop on in there, we're going to start some conversations going about what potential joint ventures or collaborations could come up. And as you heard from when our call started today, we actually have someone on the call that may be a good collaborator for us with upcoming topics. So you may just find some of those networking activities happening, and they can be so powerful right now, even in the virtual world we're in. So I encourage you to take advantage of that and hop on over into the Prospecting Challenge Group and just open the conversation up. Also, we're going to add you to our weekly newsletter, Prospecting Tip. It's non-spammy. Everything's all about helping you get to a customer. That's the question that we answer every week, is how can I get a customer today? So that's what we talk about in the Prospecting Tip. If you're practicing inbox zero and you don't want in on that, feel free to unsubscribe. You're not going to hurt our feelings. We'll still be friends. And then if you want to engage in the Facebook group also, or instead of, we would absolutely love to see you. So I'm hopeful that you took some ideas out of today that you are going to take and apply in your business, because I'm going to challenge you. There are 95% of what you learn in any presentation like this is gone within 1 hour of the presentation happening, unless you decide that you are going to take concrete action and make it happen for you. So I'm going to encourage you to take the time to really think through. We're going to be sending out the slide deck along with the recording of this session. Look through some of those slides to generate some ideas about approaching your own clients, identifying those key relationships that can help you get to revenue quickly, and also identify those areas that you can provide just overwhelming value to your clients. Because I will tell you, one of my rules is, and Zig Ziglar actually says it best, You can get anything you want in the world as long as you help enough other people get what they want. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Wish you good day and good selling.
Thanks, everybody.